It's undoubtedly true that there are more teenagers and kids in treatment for marijuana than all the other drugs combined. What the DEA never tells you is why that's true.
A kid is caught possessing or smoking marijuana. He's taken to court. He's given a choice. Either you know, some horrible penalty, or you go to a treatment center. Obviously chooses to go to treatment, and goes to treatment there, he's considered an addict.
But then the DEA gets to point to that stat and say, look at all these kids in treatment for marijuana. God, it must be because today's marijuana is not the marijuana that your parents were smoking.
As far as I understand, only 3% of the people in treatment for marijuana are there voluntarily. The other 97% were told to by their guardian or told to by a judge. You can choose between jail or treatment. And a lot of people choose treatment.
Anybody who is at all sophisticated about marijuana would rate them the way two researchers were asked to rate drugs in order of addiction. Nicotine was 1, alcohol was 2, then heroin, then cocaine, then coffee, and then marijuana. There may have been a couple of other drugs, but marijuana was at the very bottom, below coffee.
This narcotic, unlike the opiates, the synthetics, and cocaine, is non-addictive.
What do you mean by non-addictive?
By non-addictive, it is meant that the user of marijuana, when deprived of the drug, will not experience the agonies of withdrawal. It is habitual, but its use can be discontinued.
Let's find out. This is listed under cannabis-induced disorders. It's on page 237 of the DSM, and it's insurance number 292.89, cannabis intoxication. And I'm actually going to list the criteria for you for the cannabis intoxication. I'm going to first say the point, and then I'm going to translate any psychological jargon so it's actually normal speech. Diagnostic criteria for 292.89 cannabis intoxication. A. Recent use of cannabis. Okay, so you either just smoked a joint or you had a marijuana brownie, and there's other ways to have marijuana, but I'm not going to really list them because they're a little bit weird. B. Clinically significant maladaptive behavioral or psychological changes, e.g. impaired motor coordination, euphoria, anxiety, sensation of slowed time, impaired judgment, social withdrawal, that develop during or shortly after cannabis use. In other words, you're stoned. C. 2 or more of the following signs developing within 2 hours of cannabis use. 1. Conjunctival injection. So this is a big medical term meaning your eyes are red. That's why we have Visine. 2. Increased appetite. You got the munchies.
Now that went out last night in the centre break of Hollyoaks, and it's obviously clearly aimed at teenagers, kind of 14 to 18 to start with.
When you slightly younger, we're aiming at 11 to 18-year-olds.
Right.
We need to get in at that age group.
Wow. When you started smoking that, if you'd have seen that advert, would that have changed your mind?
Well, we discussed this the other day amongst friends of ours, thinking, would we have stopped if we'd seen those adverts? I think if we were 11, 12, 13, like you said, this is what I kind of think that I definitely would have been scared off by that. I think if you are smoking or you're dabbling, you know, you're in the middle of it, I don't think it will have, obviously, quite as much effect. But the younger you are, that's really where you've got to look at to kind of stop you smoking. Otherwise, everyone has a very different relationship with cannabis once you start smoking. It's very different from person to person, so not everyone's going to be like that in the advert.
How bad did it get to you? What would you say is your lowest point, was your lowest point?
I had a lot of low points. Moving from couch to couch, never having a home.
But the reason you didn't have a home, Mum, you took this tough...
Exclude him.
There was tough love here. Tell us about this.
Yeah, by the time he was 18. The difficulty was that everything he did, so he started really breaking rules left, right and centre. We would say to him, you've got to stop smoking cannabis, this is actually really getting a problem. And you were quite in denial, weren't you, about that?
Yeah.
But you would also say, I think to get us off his back, was like, OK, fine, I'm going to stop doing it. And then within 24 hours, the whole cycle had started again, and it went on and on and on. And that's when we realised that this wasn't going to get any better.
That must have been so tough for you.
It was so tiring on the family and my relationship with my husband, everything. It just was all focused on this one individual.
What did you think from this point of view when they said to you, right, you're going to do this, you're out of our house?
I truly believed every time I told them that I would stop smoking and that they pointed out all the things to me, and I truly, truly believed, and when I promised that I would stop doing it, I really did promise. But such are the subtle effects of cannabis, and such are, you know, and the fact that all my friends were very much supposedly didn't have a problem with it and stood by it. I didn't understand that everyone had a different relationship with it, and that I could be affected where someone else might not be so affected. So I was very much standing by my lifestyle choice. choice eventually, something that was very hard to break.
And something I didn't know at the time is that 1 in 4 of us carries a faulty gene that can be triggered by cannabis.
Yes.
And I think if I'd known that at the time,
these sort of
I would have been even more worried.
To make you more addicted.
More likely to move into schizophrenia.
He's talking about breaking the habit.
Yeah.
Did he break your heart?
Oh, many times, yeah. I started writing about it. I'm a freelance writer, and I started writing about it. I set up a website because I knew if it was affecting our family, it must be affecting thousands of other families. And the Guardian the Guardian took up our story. They printed some of my blog, and literally within hours we had 1,000 hits on the website.
Did that make you feel better about it? That, you know, we're not the only family going through this. I'm not a bad parent. We haven't gone wrong.
That's the point. Is that doctors, people that when we tried to get help outside the family, there was a lot of shuffling about and fingers being pointed at myself and my husband, or just about anything apart from the drug itself.
And Sarah, you've been through this as well. Of course, you've had your relationship. William's saying everybody's a different relationship. What was your relationship with cannabis?
Well, the reason I do this job is because I'm in recovery myself for 7 years, and my perspective on this is I smoked cannabis from the age of 14 till when I was 32, when I came into recovery. That was 7 years ago. And cannabis has really changed. You know, I smoked the old school cannabis that the older people in the audience who smoke might be still smoking, you know, and I smoked skunk a few times, so I know how different it is as an experience. It's true to say that not everybody who smokes cannabis, of course, is going to end up like William, but younger people, those under 18, you know, we don't know exactly what it's doing to young people's brains yet. There's a growing body of evidence that we need to listen to, and from what I've seen in schools, working with young people who are cannabis dependent, and that's the thing. Historically, people have said, oh, you can't get dependent on cannabis, it's a soft drug. Well, I'm sorry, you can, and William is the evidence.
How have you begun to turn things round, or where would you describe you're at the moment? Sarah just said that she is recovering. Are you recovering? Or
yeah, I'm recovering, definitely. Obviously, I'm only 21, so I'm not exactly sure how, you know, how recovery, or how you would define it exactly. What I do know is I haven't smoked for, you know, 10 months.
Well done.
I know now exactly what the problems are. I know that it wasn't the only factor in some of the things that happened, because I'm not callous enough to say that. I do know that there are other factors into my downfall, as it were. But I now absolutely realise it was a very prominent factor. And I went to the Priory, I did certain rehab things when I was a bit younger that didn't quite work out for me because I was taken out of an environment which I was comfortable with, and I could stop smoking outside of that environment, but it was coming back to that environment and stopping and working out who I was as a person and living by myself and very much
I'll tell you what, mate,
myself.
you are a very impressive person, Deborah. You must be very proud. I sit and I look at him there and I think, what problem's this boy got? I mean, he seems so in control, he speaks so well.
But you know, what we have been through as a family, we had to actually make a decision to step away from our son, our first son, who we just loved so much, who brought so much light into our lives when he arrived.
That's the decision as a parent I cannot imagine making. That must have been the hardest thing in the world.
Look what